Hello out there, thanks for joining us. My name's Cody Mosier. I'm a hydrologist at the Colorado Basin River Forecast Center. And this is our February Colorado River Basin water supply briefing. Okay, today we're gonna first start by talking about precipitation over the last couple of months. It's been a pretty wet December and January. We'll take a closer look at that and then look at our model soil moisture conditions that we were dialing in back in November. So antecedent soil moisture conditions prior to the snow accumulation and runoff season, and then look at what the current snowpack conditions are looking like out there. And then all those things are driving our water supply forecast, so we'll take a closer look at those throughout all of our forecast basins. And then we'll talk a little bit about the water supply forecast error that we typically see in February. After that, we'll talk about some of the upcoming weather that's in the forecast, and then open it up to questions at the end before providing a web page demo at the very end. Hoping to keep that to around 10 minutes or so if you're interested in that. So per usual, this webinar is being recorded, and the slides and the recording will be made available on our webpage later today. During the webinar, we have CBRFC staff monitoring the chat and questions box, so feel free to enter in a question there if you have one. Here we're looking at December and January precipitation. So we did see well above average precipitation during the last 2 months across the region, with Utah and Arizona generally receiving more precipitation compared to Wyoming and Colorado. Just how wet was it? It was near record wet December through January across central Utah and northwest Wyoming. So you can see the two graphics there on the lower left. First one, December 2022, lots of blues there, percent of average, looking generally about 125 up to 200% across much of the area in December, and then January, even higher percent of average values there, lots of purple, so around 200% of average across much of the region. So very good December and January when it comes to above normal precipitation. And the graphic on the right, this is from the NRCS showing the maximum rank for December and January precipitation at their SNOTEL sites located out there. So maximum rank, what does that mean? So anything with a 1, that would be the wettest December and January period for that particular station's period of record. So we do see some of those in northeast Utah, around the Uintas, Duchesne River Basin. As you move down central Utah, some 2s and 3s, and then up far northwest Colorado here, this would be the White Yampa headwaters, some 1s there, as well as near the Utah, Colorado kind of lower lying elevation areas. Southwest Colorado, so down around the San Juan, Dolores basins, some 5s, 6s, and 7s down there. So pretty good in those areas. You'll notice up in far northern Upper Green, Southwest Wyoming, not quite as good in terms of the ranking, as well as along the Continental Divide in west central Colorado. But generally, pretty strong December and January precipitation across the region, even down in Arizona, some pretty good values down there. And here we're looking at water year 2023 precipitation. So this would be the period starting back October 1st through January. So the first 4 months of the water year, the table there on the left showing those December and January percent of average precipitation values broken down by area across the upper Colorado River Basin and lower Colorado River Basin. And then the last column here, October through January, generally seeing above to much above normal water year precipitation to date. The graphic in the middle here, just summary graphic of the last column in the table again. Generally very, very good in terms of above average precipitation across much of the region. Couple exceptions again, far northern upper green and along parts of the Continental Divide in west central Colorado. Now taking a look at our model soil moisture conditions back in the fall of 2022. So these also referred to as antecedent soil moisture conditions. So this graphic showing the model soil moisture conditions from the lower soil zone in our hydrologic model. This is a result of past hydrologic conditions, including but not limited to the previous year's runoff and summer and fall precipitation. So decent monsoon season did help improve soil moisture conditions in some areas. We do adjust this every fall if we need to, and we look at base flow observations from the stream gauges out there, as well as reservoir inflows, the summer, fall precip, and runoff conditions from the past season. So the takeaway here, our model soil moisture conditions, focusing in on the upper Colorado River Basin, so that would be western Colorado, and then the Uinta area into the upper green, generally near to below normal across many of those major runoff producing areas. A little bit better in the Colorado River Basin when compared to some of the conditions in the Great Basin. And when it does come to the timing and magnitude of spring runoff, it's really a result of the snowpack conditions out there, how the spring weather plays out, and these antecedent soil moisture conditions. And just looking at the change in soil moisture conditions from the fall of 2021 through last fall, so back November 2022, and the change from those two timeframes. So the graphic on the right here is taking the difference of the two, with areas in gray seeing plus or minus 10% change. So pretty similar conditions from the prior year. In the green color showing where soil moisture conditions improved in our model, and then the orangish brown area showing where soil moisture conditions are worse off this year compared to last year. And soil moisture conditions across the lower Colorado River Basin shown here. So we do keep a little bit closer eye on these during the winter. We do see some rain events down there that can impact soil moisture conditions during the winter, whereas the upper Colorado River Basin generally receives more snow than rain, so they change much less than soil moisture conditions in Arizona. So just during the past month, looking from January 6th to current as of yesterday, February 6th. So we did see some improvements during the last month in soil moisture conditions across Arizona, and that is a result of the above average precipitation that occurred during January down across the lower Colorado River Basin. Okay, now taking a look at snowpack conditions for water year 2023, starting with the graphic on the left here. This is a graphic showing SWE conditions, SWE, snow water equivalent, the amount of water in the snow. Typically what we look at when looking at snowpack conditions. So the graphic on the left, the squares are NRCS snow tell stations that are located out there with telling us what's happening out on the ground, and then that's overlaid with the hydrologic model significant areas. So strong agreement there. We calibrate our model using a lot of these snow tell stations and force our model using those during our forecast operations. I want to spend a little bit of time with the table in the middle here talking about the snowpack conditions and how they changed from where they were on January 1st to where they are or were back about a week ago on February 1st. So these values from our hydrologic model broken down by basin. So you can see, for example, above Lake Powell, so the upper Colorado River Basin as a whole, saw a slight improvement in snowpack conditions during January, about 15 to 20% better when it comes to percent normal. And then getting into a couple of the sub basins above Lake Powell, so starting in the Green River Basin above Fontenelle and Flaming Gorge, that was that area that received less precipitation during January compared to some surrounding basins. So not a big change in percent normal snowpack conditions there, some small decreases. And then contrast that with the Duchesne and Price San Rafael Dirty Devil area that saw about 25 to 30% increase in percent of normal SWE during January. Again, Utah did receive more precipitation than Wyoming and Colorado, so we do see an increase there. And then the Colorado River headwaters area, so this would be basically starting at Lake Granby down to Cameo. January precipitation there basically led to snowpack conditions remaining pretty steady during the last month. Some small improvements there with conditions around about 125% of normal on February 1st. And you'll notice up in the Yampa White here, Northwest Colorado, similar thing happened there with about a 3% increase in snowpack conditions. A little more impressive since, you know, up there they're maintaining about 160% of normal compared to down here on the Colorado River headwaters maintaining about 125% of normal. And then in Southwest Colorado, so the Gunnison, Dolores, San Juan River basins, again, a pretty strong January with SWE conditions improving across those basins. And then in the lower Colorado River Basin, these numbers can get pretty big or pretty small. They're more variable. And that's mainly because these percentages are computed using smaller values. But the takeaway here, exceeding expectations because La Nina conditions usually result in drier than average winter weather across the Southwest US. So February 1st snowpack conditions greater than 150% of normal across the lower Colorado River Basin. And here looking at the snowpack distribution from a hydrologic model. So on the left showing those areas that are most significant to generating runoff in normal years. And then the middle graphic is showing a different subset of areas, which includes some lower elevation areas. So you can get a little bit different picture. It's a little bit, say, more optimistic if you look at these all runoff areas, but usually those are lower elevation areas that can get rain or snow. So it just kind of depends on the type of year and the type of weather you're having. In January, we did see below normal temperatures. So that resulted in snow at lower elevations versus rain events. Some of the implications just based on where your snowpack is at in terms of the timing of the snow melt. You know, it's gonna impact some of the high elevation reservoir inflows and can impact peak flows depending on the spring weather setup. And then ultimately, you know, will this have an impact on our April, May, June, July runoff volumes? If we see you know, a huge warm up in March, where a lot of that water comes off a little bit earlier than our forecast period, might be worth revisiting how the runoff season played out at the end of the season. Okay, now here looking at our February 1st water supply forecast across the upper Colorado River Basin, again broken down by sub-basin here. So Lake Powell, our Lake Powell February 1st forecast is 117% of the 1991 through 2020 average. And you can see again, a lot of greens here, different shades of green, typically about 85% on the low end in the upper green. River Basin with better conditions across the Duchesne and White Yampa just south of the upper green, and then fairly consistent conditions from Colorado River headwaters moving south across western Colorado. Not going to go over all these numbers. We'll get into some specific forecasts for these for all of these areas on the following slides. But generally, near to above average water supply forecasts for February 1st. And these are April through July runoff volumes that we are forecasting. And the same graphic on the left here showing Lake Powell forecast coming in at 7,500 calf or 7.5 million acre feet, which is 117% of average. Our water supply forecast evolution plot in the upper right. So here we're showing the volume in thousands of acre feet or calf on the y-axis, and then time on the x-axis. So you can get a sense. The blue here is our ESP model guidance. We run our model every day. And then the pink dots would be our official forecast that we issue at the beginning of the month, starting in January. And we update our forecast beginning of every month through June. So again, 117% of average for the February 1st forecast here. So these are probabilistic forecasts. So a range of numbers here. So the volume that has a 50% chance of being exceeded or not exceeded, 7,500 acre feet. And then you can get a sense of the range here. For example, this top dot here, this would be the volume that has a 10% chance of being exceeded, in this case, 11 million acre feet. And various probabilities, the bottom dot here, this would be the volume that has a 90% chance of being exceeded, 5,500 calf or 5.5 million acre feet here. And again, there is a 20% chance of the observed runoff volume being outside, so being above here, above the 10% or below the 90%. Okay, now taking a closer look at forecasts in the green Yampa, White, and Duchesne River Basin here. So starting in the upper green, southwest Wyoming, January precip in the far north was around 90% of normal, so slightly below, with forecasts there ranging between 85 to 105% of normal. And this is up to a 5% decrease from our forecast back on January 1st. And in these boxes, we're showing the April through July volume in thousands of acre feet, number on the left, and then the percent of that 1991 through 2020 average on the right. Okay, moving down to the Yampa White Basin, again, have seen consistently more storms targeting these areas, both the Duchesne and the Yampa White. So forecast there a little bit better off, 125 to 170 in the Yampa White and 110 to 160 in the Duchesne. And in both of these cases, forecast increased from the forecast a month ago due to above average January precipitation. And a closer look at our water supply forecast and snow conditions across the Upper Green River Basin. So here we're looking at the forecast and snow conditions for two of the major reservoirs up there, Fontenelle, farther north. And you can see we're showing our model snow in this graphic here. Some oranges, yellows, so typically near to below average snowpack conditions there. And you can see on this snow plot here, the black trace right around normal. And these are our model snowpack conditions. And you can see how it compares to normal, which would be the blue trace, and then last year's trace is also plotted here on the green line. So better snowpack conditions as of February 1st here compared to last year, right around the historical median, with the forecast there, 88% of average. And then down at Flaming Gorge, which is a little bit further downstream, you do see better snowpack conditions. So looking at this map here, so what flows into Flaming Gorge, you get a couple of these areas downstream. So this is kind of the southern Wyoming range area here, and then this area down here, the north slope of the Uintas, pretty good snowpack conditions down there. So both of these areas, better snowpack conditions, so that's resulting in a little bit better forecast outlook, 91% of average compared to 88%. And you can see here, yeah, as the image indicates, sitting above normal here compared to right around normal above Fontenelle. And a couple more evolution plots and snowpack plots. So the top one, this is Yampa at Deer Lodge Park. So again, Yampa has been consistently wetter. You can see the trend in the forecast has been increasing as a result of the wetter weather. Well, with this forecast coming in at 143% of average, and model snow looking very strong. Across the bottom, this is an example from the Duchesne River Basin, Upper Stillwater Reservoir. Pretty similar story. Forecast has been increasing due to wetter than normal weather. Okay, now down into the Upper Colorado River main stem area. So we typically think of this as kind of two sub areas. So this top area here being above Kremling. There's a lot of reservoirs up here: Wolford, Willow Creek, Granby, Williams Fork, Dillon, and Green Mountain, all reservoirs. So forecasts up there ranging 95 to 130% of average, which is up to a 10% increase from last month. And then downstream Kremling to Cameo, so this would include the Eagle River, the Roaring Fork River tributaries entering the Colorado River main stem. So forecast there, 95 to 110% of average, up to a 10% increase in those basins as well from the January 1st forecast. And a little bit closer look at this area when it comes to our forecast and model snow conditions. So this cutout here showing our model snow conditions as a percent of median. some pretty varying snowpack conditions in this area. We'll start up here, Wolford. So this area here borders that White Yampa area that have seen more storms this winter. So generally better snowpack conditions along this northern divide, with Wolford seeing above normal snowpack, 115% of average when it comes to the April, May, June, July volume forecast. Willow Creek here, above normal snowpack. Was also seeing some post-fire impact from the East Troublesome fire back in October 2020. So above normal snowpack and the post-fire impacts driving that a little bit higher, around 128% of average at Willow Creek for the April, May, June, July forecast. And then moving south along the Continental Divide, you'll notice some yellows, oranges. So snowpack conditions not quite as good above Dillon Reservoir, where our April, May, June, July forecast is 96% of average. So this area has seen less precip and snow compared to some of the surrounding areas. And then continuing to move clockwise, Rudeye Reservoir, 98 right around normal for the April, May, June, July forecast. Down at, we'll jump up here to Dotsero. Again, a little bit, is the low and mid elevation snowpack driving these forecasts a little bit higher. You'll notice as you move through downstream through some of these lower lying areas, you'll notice the percent normal snowpack performing better, 150+% of normal. So driving that forecast up a little bit, as well as down at Cameo, where the forecast is 108% of average. All right, continuing to move south along the Continental Divide in western Colorado. So here we're looking at the Gunnison and Dolores River Basins. Gunnison, February 1st forecast ranging anywhere from 90 to 145% of average, which was up to a 35% increase from the January 1st forecast. And similar story in the Dolores with increasing forecast due to the above average January precipitation down here. With forecast in the Dolores 105 to 125% of average. And in the San Juan River Basin, February 1st water supply forecast ranging 95 to 120% of average, anywhere from a 5 to 25% increase from our January water supply forecast. Now a little bit closer look at Blue Mesa Reservoir and the Gunnison River Basin along the top here. Some values up here with the ESP 50 forecast, 680,000 acre feet or 170% of average, with the snow plot in the upper right and the forecast trend. So you can see the forecast trending up as snowpack trending higher. So about a 12% when it comes to percent average increase at Blue Mesa. And then in the San Juan River Basin along the bottom at Navajo Reservoir, see the evolution plot and the snowpack conditions. A similar story, forecast trending up as we've seen snowpack trend up during January. And now looking, this is Southwest Utah and the Virgin River Basin. Just a couple of forecast points here, coming in 140 to 150% of average, which was around a 40 to 45% increase from our January first water supply forecast in the Virgin River Basin. The snow plot here on the bottom right. So here we're looking at a composite of SNOWTEL stations and the snow water equivalent compared to a couple different years here. So the dark blue, that's current snowpack conditions, tracking right in line with about where 2011 was at this point. Couple other years on here, 2005, very big snow year in the Virgin, and then you can see last year's snow trace here, and then we're right above the median. That would be the magenta here. So pretty strong conditions in the Virgin River Basin when it comes to snowpack and water supply outlook. And then down in the lower Colorado River Basin, so here we are forecasting a January through May volume as opposed to the April through July volume across the upper Colorado River Basin. Forecast ranges anywhere from down to 85% in the little Colorado up to 315% in the upper Gila. Generally well above normal forecasts here. And because it is a January through May period, we're now in the observed period of the forecast window. So those observations, those stream observations in January are coming into play here, well above normal January observed stream flow across Arizona. These percentages, similar to when you're looking at percent normal snowpack, some of these values can be pretty small when you're computing the percentage. So impressive numbers, but something to keep in mind with how large they are. And a couple examples from the lower Colorado River Basin. So the Gila along the top, forecasting above normal volumes, as well as in the Salt River Basin. And you can see at NRCS SNOWTEL stations in these areas, current SWE near normal seasonal peak SWE in these areas. And this is during a La Nina. And we'll get into that a little bit more here. So summarizing El Nino Southern Oscillation, or ENSO. So currently La Nina advisory, and that's issued by the Climate Prediction Center, CPC as they're known. So typically during a La Nina, we see an increased chance of drier winter weather across Arizona. So this graphic down here, typical winter weather pattern during a La Nina with our forecast area in this box here. So you can see drier winter weather typically occurs during La Nina, but as we've seen this year, that hasn't been the case. So the outlook when it comes to the ENSO status, so again, sitting in a La Nina advisory, but it looks like that's going to quickly transition to ENSO neutral conditions come this month through summer, and then possibly a transition from neutral to El Nino conditions come late summer, early fall out there. It's quite a ways out, but you can see some of the models that go into predicting the ENSO status there, what they're showing. So currently La Nina looks like we're gonna transition to ENSO neutral for a while and then possibly get into El Nino phase of ENSO. We'll see. And now, again, usually during a La Nina, we see drier than normal winter weather across the lower Colorado River Basin. That hasn't been the case this year. Here, summarizing December, January precip across Arizona with percent of average values down here in certain basins, and then percent of average for the 2-month period at SNOWTEL stations, generally 150 to 200%. So exceeding expectations given the La Nina status, which is atypical. So we did a little bit of a deep dive into the last time it was wetter than normal across the lower Colorado River Basin during La Nina. So this table here showing the last 4 or 5 times we had La Nina and how the observed volumes came in across the lower Colorado River Basin. So the most recent La Nina period prior to this one was back September through January 2017. So then the we had January through May 2018 observations came in much below normal, which is expected during La Nina. But if you look back for the July-January 2016, we were in a La Nina phase there, and then the January-May 2017 came in well above average. So this has happened before. It's unusual, but not unheard of. And then a couple other examples back in 2011, 2010, below average, below median January through May observed volumes. And then just some perspective on how these volumes compare to some places across the upper Colorado River Basin. So Verde, this is Horseshoe Reservoir here, approximation of the drainage area, forecasting 300,000 acre feet, which is similar in magnitude to say Green Mountain or McPhee. The salt, this is looking at Roosevelt Reservoir here. So this drainage area, a little bit higher volume, 455,000 acre feet, similar to what we're forecasting in the Duchesne Basin this year, as well as basin in the San Juan, Animas, Durango. And then the upper Gila, San Carlos, so headwaters here and some of the headwaters in New Mexico, flowing west to San Carlos, 230,000 acre feet, comparable to Lake Granby or east at Almont. So some perspective there. Again, ENSO does not impact or play a huge role across the upper Colorado River Basin, but just some comparative volumes here. So this did happen. What's happening this year did happen back it would be the 2017 runoff period. We've been in La Nina now 3 years in a row, and this wasn't the case back then, but it was a weak La Nina back in 2016, and which it was transitioning to ENSO neutral, which is pretty similar to what's happening now. A couple links here if you want to check those out later and get some more details on this. All right, now looking at our forecast verification. So what kind of forecast error do we typically see for our February 1st water supply forecast? Across, this is looking at the upper Colorado River Basin. So a few points here, generally about 15 to 25% forecast error in February. We tend to forecast better in headwater locations that are primarily snowmelt driven, and we know what's going on when it comes to some of the diversions and water management that's going on. Don't do quite as well in those lower elevation areas that could see more rain, and where we know less about some of the diversions that are happening. And at this point, earlier in the season, future weather is the primary source of our forecast error. Now, February, first week of February, what have we seen weather-wise? It's been mostly dry, much less active than December and January. The graphic on the left showing This is as of yesterday. We did get some precip over the last 24 hours. It wasn't much, but here we're seeing the first week generally less than 30% of average. It's been pretty dry here, as you can see, starting February 1st and then moving through the first week. And then just looking at our model snowpack conditions, what have those done in the past week? Well, we are sitting above average, and we see a week of dry weather. Yeah, those are gonna push snowpack values down closer to normal. There's no surprise there. All right, now into the weather forecast. So we're looking at this is the precipitation forecast for the next 7 days from the Weather Prediction Center. So there's not a lot in the precipitation forecast for the next 7 days. We are expecting some precipitation to northern and eastern portions of the upper Colorado River Basin. That would most of that looks like it's going to occur tomorrow, but not a lot. It looks like maybe up to a quarter inch along some of those highest elevations. So the graphic on the left, this is looking at precip amounts today and tomorrow. And then after that, we're going to see a dry period with some high pressure, bringing quieter weather. That would be Thursday through Saturday. And then on Sunday, weather models are showing some low pressure, a trough of low pressure beginning to form down south of California and then moving through southern Arizona. So that would be the graphic in the middle here showing precipitation forecast amounts Sunday and Monday. So not a lot in the precipitation forecast for the next 7 days, but it doesn't look like it's going to completely dry out in the next 7 days. And then into mid-February, so this is looking at 500 millibar height anomalies on February 16th here. So more good news when it comes to just not seeing a completely drying out of the weather pattern. So here, this setup looking to favor below normal temperatures. Again, chances of precipitation associated with this as well, but we're not seeing substantial precipitation in the forecast. So active, but not substantial precipitation. And again, looking into that mid-February, February 15th through 21st, here, actually this could be the 14th through 20th, but these graphics are from the Climate Prediction Center, so they're forecasting the probability of above normal or below normal precipitation on the left here. So there are elevated odds of above average precipitation in that 8 to 14 day range, as well as increased chances of below normal temperatures out in that February 14th through 20th range. So now, quickly summarizing here, water year 2023 precipitation mostly above average across the Colorado River Basin, with Utah and Arizona generally being targeted by more storms than Wyoming and Colorado. Near record wet December-January period across central Utah, northwest Wyoming, and then wetter than normal winter during a La Nina across the Arizona, which is unusual, but has happened before. Our model soil moisture conditions generally below normal across many of those major runoff producing areas in the upper Colorado River Basin, but mostly above average soil moisture conditions currently across the lower Colorado River Basin. Snowpack conditions mostly above normal across both the upper Colorado upper and lower Colorado areas with some of that colder than normal weather, producing more low and mid elevation snow than usual. Our forecast ranges here, Lake Powell again, 117% of average, and then the weather outlook, more active weather expected in the next 2 weeks than what we've been seeing recently, with below normal temperatures, but most likely going to come in drier than December and January, which were very wet. Here's our water supply webinar schedule. Upcoming dates here, looks like our next one will be in a month. And we also provide a similar briefing for water supply conditions across Utah and the Great Basin. If you're interested in that, later today at 11:30. And this information is on our webpage. And here, if you're wanting to register for those future webinars, this will get you to that point. Here's our webpage, cbrfc.noaa.gov, webinar schedule links. We also have some email lists that we send out information to if you're interested in that. And then, as I mentioned, we post these slides and recordings to our webpage. You can get a PDF or a recording or a YouTube link there if that's more convenient. And we'd love to hear from you. Here's how you can get in touch, email, phone number there, webpage. Let us know if you have any questions. And that's all I had for the water supply briefing before getting into the webpage demo. So I'm going to stop and take any questions that may be out there before moving on. So you can raise your hand and we can unmute you, or you can chat a question into the question box.
Okay, Cody, we had one question earlier from Lindsay. Lindsay, and I apologize if I'm going to say your last name wrong. Lindsay Aramayo. She asked, why is the soil moisture below normal if there has been above normal precipitation the past 4 months?
That's a good question. Let's go back to our soil moisture graphics here. So yeah, we have seen above normal precip. I think October was above normal. We had a pretty wet monsoon season into early fall. So yeah, all of that moisture did help improve soil moisture conditions. But and it's worth pointing out that these soil moisture conditions that we're showing from our model, these are that deeper soil moisture content, so not as close to the surface, deeper down, that longer responding base flow conditions. So this can take months to years to impact these deeper soil moisture conditions with some of that moisture. So really, I think since following a wet 2019, we had a very dry basically 3 years, where I think a lot of these areas are still trying to recover from multiple years of below normal precipitation. So I hope that answers your question. And then here, again, looking at the difference between the fall of 2021 and this past fall, we did see a lot of improvements. They were pretty poor last year. They're better this year generally, especially across Western Colorado. But I think still trying to recover, still haven't fully recovered, I should say, in a lot of these areas following the very wet water year 2019. After that, it got very record dry in some cases for long periods of time. So still trying to recover completely from that.
Okay. So we have another question from Noe Santos. Do you expect the snow water equivalent accumulation to decrease with the lack of major events in the basin?
All right, let's take a look. I'll bring this slide up. I would expect, in terms of the, just the raw snow water equivalent, out there in inches, especially across the higher elevations, I don't expect those values to decrease. But when you look at the percent of normal or percent of median, yeah, I would expect, as we see here during the first week of February, just, if you're sitting above to much above normal when it comes to snowpack conditions, and you get a dry period with below normal precipitation, you're going to see some of these percent values trend towards normal. So, in this case, just in the last week across the upper Colorado River Basin, these percentages changing anywhere from 5 to 10% lower. Just in this 1 week that it's been relatively dry. Hope that answers your question, Noe.
Okay. I am not seeing any other questions at this time.
Okay.
Okay, hold on. Sorry, late entry. So this is from Crystal Ortiz. Across the lower Colorado River Basin, can you talk about what an efficient snowmelt process looks like through May?
Yeah, let's use this slide here. So an efficient snowmelt process through May. So there are some pretty big snowpack values out there when it comes to percent normal and just, the sweep magnitudes out there. And we did see a wetter than normal monsoon across Arizona. So a lot of these areas, they are saturated from some of the monsoonal rain events, even into, winter rain events. We've seen some pretty impressive stream rises down there across Arizona. So soil moisture conditions down there generally above normal. And as the snowpack melts off there, we would expect to see more of that water, making it into the streams with these wetter than normal soil moisture conditions compared to if soil moisture conditions were well below average. We would lose some of that water to soil infiltration. Now, we do hope to see the weather stay well, January and December exceeding expectations given the La Nina. We would like to see, the weather pattern staying active and progressive down there. And, if you get rain on snow events, that's, could improve runoff efficiencies. So, yeah, kind of all those things. I'm not sure what else I can say about that. You can reach out if you have more questions about that. All right. Looks like,
Okay, I think we're done. Yeah, with questions.
okay. So we are running a little short on time here. I will do just a quick web page demo if you're interested in sticking around for that. I'm again hoping to keep that around 10 minutes. If not, thanks for attending. I hope to see you next month. So now into a little demo of our web page, talking about some of the newer additions and features, just general overview. So let's see, I'm gonna start by just talking about the layout of the web page a little bit. So here's our homepage, cbrfc.noaa.gov. There's a menu that runs along the top with a map and some site options that control what you see on the map. So the default view, these are all of our points that we produce a 10-day stream flow forecast for. So these are not water supply forecasts, these are 10-day stream flow forecasts. And you can, we'll get into looking at the water supply forecast, but just here on the homepage, some map options in terms of base map. You can turn on some different layers in terms of our basin boundaries, forecast groups. So these would be the larger river basins. So for example, you know, the Gunnison, Dolores, San Juan boundaries, that would be the forecast groups. So some layering options there. And then again, these are our 10-day stream flow forecasts in map view. So you can see right now, not a lot going on. We're calling these types of conditions normal. If we do see some significant rises due to rainfall runoff or snow melt, or if they get to approaching some of the flood thresholds that are defined out there, they'll change colors. So usually, in most cases, when you're looking at data on a web page, you can look at it in map form or also list form. So under the rivers menu, the conditions map, again, that takes you right to our homepage, 10-day stream flow forecast here. You can look at this in list view if you prefer table format with some filtering options. So say you want to look at all the stream flow forecasts in the San Juan, and let's turn the hydrograph plots on. Those are the clicks that would get you, and now you can scroll through conditions in the San Juan River Basin. Again, not a lot going on. Looks like maybe a little snow melt here in the forecast. So again, list form, you can turn plots on or off with some filtering options up here. Now back to our homepage. We have this linear flow option box here. So if you prefer to look at a hydrograph with linear flow along the y-axis, you can select that and zoom in to a point. So I have linear flow selected. We're gonna just choose forecast point here, Colorado River near Cisco. So this is again, our 10-day stream flow forecast in the green there, and then what the stream has been doing when it comes to observed stream flow. So around 2,400 CFS, and then looks like the colder weather may bump that down a bit, and now it's recovering a little bit as temperatures rebound. So it's interactive. As you hover, you can get values. You can get a little bit more info on the plot. So when was the forecast created? What's the peak, etc. You can adjust the dates down here if you'd like. And then for each one of our forecast points, some options along the top. You can get some metadata, critical stages. So these would be defined flood thresholds, gauge height or stage, and then the associated flow value. And then again, under the point info, if you want to go directly to the USGS page, that's available there if you want to look at the raw data. Again, that's all under point info. Downloads, you can grab images or CSV data files for the forecast with these options. You can select various things such as the peak. You can show or hide, say verification. This is going to show you some of our recent forecasts traces right on this plot here. That would be verification. And you can also turn on a data table option along the bottom. And you can scale the data, say you want to look at, well, scale it to this defined threshold we call action stage. We're well below that. So some scaling options there. Again, if you want to look at the y-axis, since stage and flow are not linear for rating tables, you can choose to change this y-axis to look at the stage in feet or the flow in cubic feet per second. All right, so that was all I'm going to touch on with our 10-day stream flow forecast. So back to our homepage, going to talk about some forecast precipitation features. So I'm going to turn off all of our stream flow points here. You can do that using the show box. So again, forecast precipitation. This is a newer option we've added. So turning this layer on, this is showing our 7-day precipitation forecast that went into our model this morning. Again, you can turn on some boundaries to get a better sense of if that helps. And this is showing a 1 through 7 day total. You can see what it looks like for each day. So again, tomorrow expecting some precipitation, and then a few days of dry weather, and then some more precipitation, light across southern Arizona late into the weekend. And then you can also look at the change. So how has the precipitation forecast changed from yesterday through today for each day? So here, greens and light blues, plus or minus 1/10 of an inch, you know, not a huge change. And you can select previous dates, maybe something a little more exciting. I think mid-January, yeah, quite a bit more going on mid-January, a bigger forecast, and how that forecast changed from the previous day. And you can adjust the transparency of this forecast precipitation layer if you'd like. All right, now daily precipitation, I'm going to talk about that next. So this is observed precipitation that went through a quality control process. This is something we didn't show in the webinar. This is precipitation that occurred in the last 24 hours. So you can see Wasatch got some precipitation, as well as the White Yampa headwaters again. And you can go back in time, so mostly dry during the first part of February, and then again back in mid-January. So this is the precipitation that occurred basically January 15th. So this would be the morning of the 16th. So most of this precipitation likely occurred on the 15th. Now, staying with precipitation, looking at monthly precipitation. So we did show some of these graphics in the webinar. So here we're looking at monthly observed precipitation. This is actually, looks like water year precipitation that's selected here. And you can look at January, again, very wet, 200+% of average in January. You can scroll back, again, December was wet, November, etc. And then month to date in February, mostly dry start to February, and then a couple of these areas starting to, they got precipitation the last couple of days starting to increase a little bit, but still below normal for the first week of February. And you can filter these, you can show all areas or just those areas that from our model that contribute most to that April through July runoff, or January through May runoff. Okay, enough about precipitation. I'm going to move on to soil moisture. So soil moisture, you can access, again, most of these options available both on the map option or from the menu. We do have the soil moisture here if you want to look at that, interactively. And these, if you're looking at it on the map, you can zoom in and get a little bit closer picture of conditions. Whereas we also, under our water supply menu, provide, these are static maps, perhaps a little bit better for presentations. And then something relatively new are these percent change, which we did show in this past webinar. So you can see how conditions, soil moisture conditions from our model have changed year over year. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on our water supply menu. So a lot of options here, starting with the official forecast map. So this will get you to our map and these locations, not circles like our 10-day forecast or triangles. So these are all the points where we provide water supply forecast for. And again, also, if you're looking for this, in list form, you can choose the list option here. You can sort by, again, if I just want to see conditions in the San Juan, you can turn the plots on. If you want to just quickly get a feel for how ESP, how our model volume guidance is trending. So sticking with the water supply menu, the official forecast discussion. So we write up one of these discussions around the beginning and middle of the month, and send it out to our main stakeholder list. So a lot of the information in this is also in our water supply webinars, but there are some nuggets of information that are in this discussion that is not in the webinars, and vice versa. So again, we update this every couple of weeks during the season, and then there's an archive if you're looking, wondering, well, what were conditions like back in February 1st of 2019. There's an archive option there. Sticking with this, touch on this Upper Colorado situational awareness page. This is more or less used as just an overview of conditions above Lake Powell, soil moisture, snowpack, some links here. So pretty Lake Powell centric. Sticking with water supply, I'll go to this latest model guidance map. So the difference between the latest model guidance map and the official forecast map is the latest is showing our latest model run. So our latest model run was yesterday. We're currently working on running our model today, and we'll publish results today. But instead of the February 1st forecast, you can get the model guidance from our most recent model run. Okay. And then verification, we did show that during the webinars. Some links there if you're interested in checking that out. At the very bottom, there's documentation, which we do spend time trying to keep up to date. You can get more information about our forecast methods, more about soil moisture. So there's 3 soil moisture links on our webpage with documentation. Current forecast points and their adjustments. So this page provides all of our water supply forecast points and any adjustments that we make, accounting for upstream diversions, reservoirs, etc. We are forecasting unregulated volumes. So it is important to know what's going into the forecast in terms of backing any upstream diversions out and taking into account those. And then lastly, our river basin stick diagrams. These diagrams provide information about what's in our hydrologic model. So this is our stick diagram for the Dolores River Basin here. So various forecast points, diversions, reservoirs, Dolores, above Kremling, a little bit more going on up there in terms of diversions and water being moved around. These are interactive, so if you hover, you can get the name of the location, and then clicking on it will get you to our 10-day flow forecast hydrograph. Okay, moving along here. Again, we do post our webinar slides and recordings on our webpage. You can get to those a couple of ways. So I just clicked on our little news banner up here where you can register for webinars. There's a link with our presentations there, and we also have a link under the About. So again, 2023, our January slides here, and a recording. If you're using Google Chrome, that'll pop right up, and then a YouTube link there. Now, a little bit about our water supply evolution plots. I'm gonna just pick a point here, Lake Granby. Again, interactive as you hover. You can look at previous years, how the forecast verified and how observations came in, some plot options. So you can, so that if you have the max and the min on, it can squish your plot. You can turn that off, get a little bit closer look at things, or just turn the max or the min on. This probability traces is a nice option. This will give you the ESP guidance for the max ESP trace, the min ESP trace, and all of these various probabilistic traces. Again, that's the probability traces options. And then data links, you can grab or look at data, forecasts. We're not in the observations period yet, but once we hit April 1st or 2nd, this observations link will provide what observations have come in during the runoff period. You can see historical volumes with the current forecast here. Looks like this is ranked low to high. Let's see. And last thing I'm going to touch on is the climate menu, where we have the CPC's climate outlook. So we did show these ones in the webinar. So these, again, are the probability of above or below normal precipitation and temperature, and links to their forecast discussion and their webpage there. Okay, I'm gonna stop there and wrap it up here due to the time. Let's see, I'll stay on for a little bit longer for questions, but that wraps up the demo part of the webinar. I'm not seeing any further questions, so I'm gonna sign off here. Thanks for attending, and we hope to see you next month in March. Thanks.